everyone. Welcome back to the Divine Council Worldview podcast. I'm your host, Mel, and we got your other host, Mike Chu, Ron Johnson, and a special guest listener. She's not really a guest. She's our illustrious leader, the president of Heiser Foundation, Drenna Heiser-Hollander. And we want to welcome her to the show. This is our 100th episode, and we want to kind of celebrate that by bringing her on and getting some of her story with Mike and where she's at today. And talk about some of the other things we got going on. We have a lot of things happening. You guys have seen some of it online on YouTube, books, and we even have an upcoming conference coming up in October we're going to talk about. So stay tuned for that, for information on that. But we just want to welcome everybody and welcome Drenna. Thanks for coming on with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So I guess we're going to kind of keep this an open and fluid discussion. We kind of have some ideas of some of the things we're going to talk about with Drenna, and we're going to bounce back and forth between myself, Mike, and Ron, just whatever kind of piques our interest, because I know a lot of you have heard other people's experiences with Mike and how they got to know Mike, but we've never really heard from Drenna, and she's clearly got the inside take. So we're gonna dig a lot into that, as well as where we're going with the podcast. But I guess Drenna, we don't want to take the decades that you were with Mike. We'll have to, I guess, kind of do a little bit of a Reader's Digest version. But I guess when did you meet Mike? How did you meet him? Like, when did y'all get married? Did you have any idea that you would have this crazy life that took you all over the United States?
Well, first things first, I didn't know what I was getting into. Obviously, how could you know? But I knew right away that Mike was special. He was set apart. It was obvious to anybody who knew him. He only became a Christian at 16, but he went gangbusters after the Lord completely changed his life and turned him upside down, inside out, and changed the trajectory of what he thought he wanted to do with his life when he became a Christian. And so I met Mike. My sister and I were off at college, and my parents decided to change churches while we were at college. So we came home for our summer break, and my parents walked us into the church, and my dad said, "Oh, there's this young man I'd like for you guys to meet." So he took us over, and there was this young man sitting in the pew. He had his Bible open and probably a Greek New Testament, something on his lap. And he took us over and said, "Mike, I'd like you to meet my daughters." And he introduced us, and Mike just looked up and said hi, and then immediately looked back down at his Bible, and that was it, and it was like, great. Wow. So typical
Did
Mike.
your dad know Mike?
He met him because my dad and mom had started going to the small church pastored by the Bergerac boys from Minnesota. And so my dad had met him and introduced us. And I can remember Mike told me years later, that after he met us, we followed my parents up to sit in the pew, and it was the 80s, and we had big long hair. We have a lot of hair. And he said his first thought was, "I bet that guy has his hands full." So that was Mike's first thought, and of me and my sister. So I think that's funny.
Mm-hmm. When did you start to date then?
It was during that summer. I think we were working together. I was a single, a college student, and so was he. So we were in the same circles at church. And being a young church, they used a lot of volunteer people at the church. And so we all volunteered. And so Mike and I and several others in the singles group kind of led camps and did VBS and all that stuff. And so we were drivers, or we were counselor. I think we were counselors at a camp together 1 week during that summer. And I can remember Mike and I playing Foursquare, and it was just fun. He was very athletic, and I can remember just watching him and how interesting he was and how engaging he was with the scripture and with anybody who wanted to talk about Christ and the scripture or anything really. And so I started really noticing him because of that fact. I just noticed how engaging and interesting he was and how he talked to anybody. And so that kind of drew me actually to him and wanting to talk more with him. And so I can remember at the end of the summer, I was praying about it because I really wanted to get to know him, but he was very shy. I mean, he didn't really talk to me a lot outside of church or these activities that we would be involved in together. And so I was praying 1 week, and I just asked God to put us together where we can actually talk to each other. And I can remember it was a Wednesday night after church. We had prayer meeting when churches still did that. And so he came up to me and asked me to go to Dairy Queen with him. And I was like, sure. So, and Ron, you may remember the big green Pontiac Le Mans that he had, that lime green Pontiac Le Mans. You remember that, Ron?
Oh, I sure do. Yep, Susan does too.
And so I got in his big car and we went to Dairy Queen, and he came to my house and we talked till 3 a.m. And that was our first official date. And then we just dated pretty steadily from there. We transferred to Bob Jones University together. He was at Pillsbury Baptist Bible College. I was at Tennessee Temple, but we decided to go to Bob Jones University together. So we transferred and we dated that whole year. So we were together about 13 months. We came home for summer then following school year. He was going to be a senior. He had 1 semester to go, and I was going to be a senior as well. And we broke up. And that was devastating. So I let him go back to college, and I sat out that semester. It had been 13 months, and I could tell that Mike wasn't ready to commit. And so the relationship kind of was getting a little stagnant on my end and his end. And so we decided that summer to part ways. And so Mike went back to school. He had 1 semester at Bob Jones to finish. And I decided to sit out while he finished because we would be at the same university, and I didn't want to, run into him. And, I was feeling hurt and all that. So I worked that semester. And so Mike finished. And then when he came home for Christmas, he got in contact with me again and sent me flowers, and we started dating again, which is not uncommon for people who decide that they're going to get married. I know a lot of people that went through that process as well, just, trying to decide when you're young if you're really ready to commit. But so we got back together, and then we got married a year later after I had finished my year at my senior year at the university. So we got married, and then I think we immediately, Mike was still in school, but he decided he wanted to go to Dallas Theological Seminary. Ron was already there. That is a very common thread, is wherever Ron went, we went, it seemed like. So, And so I can remember the first time I met Ron and Susan was at their wedding. I was a guest of Mike, and Mike was invited. And so I can remember meeting you guys at your wedding. And then Ron moved to Dallas, and we moved to Dallas and to go to the seminary there. And we actually celebrated our first anniversary there. And so we were young and just married, and he was in seminary. So that is also a common thread of us just moving around, where Mike is going to be teaching, first finishing degrees and then teaching. So yeah, that was my role, as a role of a student wife, actually. And I can remember, this is funny, Ron, you might think this is funny, but I can remember Susan and we were sitting at a table with Jeannie Hendricks, Dr. Howard Hendricks' wife. I don't know if this audience knows who that is, but he was a prominent theologian, a teacher at Dallas Theological Seminary, wrote lots and lots of theology books. And my husband really liked him. And I can remember telling her, Ron, because she was asking, what do you think you're going to be in 5 years? And what do you think your husband's going to be doing, like as a career? And why is he in school? And I looked at her, I said, he's going to be just like your husband, Dr. Howard Hendricks. And she looked at me like, okay, I've heard that before, but it was just so funny. I can remember Susan looking at me and laughing too, but I was serious because I thought, Mike's he's going to make something of himself, and he's going to be important with his writings, even back then. So that's kind of a funny story.
And then from Dallas, you went back to PA, right? You started at
yes,
University of Pennsylvania then next, right?
Yes. It was hard because at Dallas, at that point, they didn't accept any student loans, like federal student loans. And so we couldn't afford to go there and pay as we went. We didn't have family support financially at all. And so every thing that we paid for was on our dime. And so Mike decided to pursue his master's at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia area. And so he went and did a master's in ancient, I'm not even sure what it was, to be honest. It was so long ago.
Ancient history, I'm sure, which when I look back upon your life, that was very foundational to where Mike would end up. Because in other words, Dallas would not have given him the education that set him on the course of where he eventually went. So,
and that is very true.
I finished at Dallas, but yeah.
Yeah. And look what you're doing. It's great. But that is very true, because when you're in these academic circles where Mike found himself circulating in, you really have to have those liberal secular degrees as I would say as a Christian or as a theologian, a lot of times for the broader academic world to really get behind and endorse your.
Well, did I ever tell you the story?
Academics.
Did I ever tell you the story when Logos called me? The president of Logos called me because I was on Mike's resume, and he said, "Who is this Mike Heiser guy? He's, I'm interviewing for academic editor." This was, I don't remember the year. But I remember where I was. I sat on the couch in my house, and I just got a big smile on my face. He couldn't see it, of course. We're on those old cell phones at the time. And I said, here's what makes Mike your perfect guy. Please hire him, because he's got degrees from Bob Jones University, so he knows that world, very conservative. And he has degrees from Pennsylvania and Madison, which is the other side of that world. In other words, he knows the liberal stuff, he knows the conservative stuff, and everything in between. And so I think his move, or your inability to pay the bill at Dallas, was providential. Now that I hear that, I didn't know that. And the fact that it moved you to Pennsylvania is probably a stepping stone to, again, one of those things that you couldn't have seen coming, but it got you to where you went. Or did I say that right? It put you in the direction that that landed you at Logos, I think, because I don't know if my reference tipped the scales or not, but boy, I was so happy to tell the president, you've got to hire this guy. So
yeah, and that's a story in and of itself. When Mike applied for the Logos position as academic editor, and then he finished there as scholar in residence. But he shielded me from a lot of his worries. He was really good about that, and so he found this job opening, and he applied for it. And I think we had like $3 left in our checking account. And Mike had just graduated and we had nowhere to go. And, his TA ships were over and Ron, thank you so much. Maybe you did. I'm sure it helped, because they called you, obviously. They didn't know Mike, but, they were intrigued as well that this guy went through Bob Jones University, because the president and CEO and founder of Logos, the whole family were very conservative, and they knew all about Bob Jones. They knew what kind of school it was. And they were intrigued, like, how's this guy, this would be perfect for us because he can speak to our conservative base, but he can also speak to the academic side of our company. And so it was a perfect marrying of that. But he applied, they called him that day, I believe. And the next week we were out, and 2 weeks later we had a job offer, and a month later we were moving there. And so it was very quick, but it was providential. And it was another just instance of how the Lord had directed our path. Directly.
Tell the story of the tunnel in your house.
Oh.
Tell the story of your house, because Mike showed me this door, and I never. It's just an interesting story.
Yeah. So when we moved to Washington all the way from where are we living? Wisconsin. I get so confused. Wisconsin, yep. Madison, Wisconsin. We rented this house for 3 years, but then we wanted to buy a house. And so the only house we could afford in this, the Pacific Northwest is very expensive to break into the housing market. And so the only house we could afford was this house on the border between the U.S. and Canada. Literally on the border. It's like there's our road in front of our house, right? A ditch, yeah. And then Zero Avenue in Canada. And and so this house actually was very notorious because in 2005, it was the only house ever discovered, even since 2005. So this is 21 years ago, to have a drug tunnel from the Canadian border up into the living room of the house we bought. So it was... Yeah, it was the only drug tunnel ever discovered until still, and so it was kind of a famous house. It had been on CNN and all the Canadian newses and all that stuff. So, but it was the only house we could afford, and we got it for a nice great price. It was a beautiful setting, and I love it. It was a 1970s house. They're my favorites. We remodeled it and we sold it for a big profit when we left to move to Florida. And so it happened. It's another, God thing. It's like we couldn't afford anything else. So we bought this house and it ended up being a gem for us. Nobody else wanted it, but we took it.
Did you make a trip north through the tunnel? Did you do it?
Well, when our kids were bad, we threatened to throw them in the tunnel, but no, the tunnel was completely cleared up. They had to rip up the road because obviously the road was compromised, so they had to do a lot of work to fill that in. But there was no more tunnel. But it's funny.
Holy cow!
Wow. Yeah, I remember Mike showing me the door.
Yeah.
So maybe, and I don't want to, run your show here, Mel, but maybe that would be a good time
This is all of our show.
To tell the story of going from Logos to Florida. and how that moved. Because that was a big one for you guys. I know you went through a lot of thinking, and Mike was back and forth in his mind. What should I do? And how'd that happen?
Right. Well, around 2017, we were getting a little bit antsy living in the Pacific Northwest. I feel Mike was getting to the age where he wanted to do what he really wanted to do. And that was not really work for and write books for someone else. He wanted to do it on his own. So we were kind of getting antsy 2 years even before we moved. And we knew that the Lord was calling us. We didn't know where, but we just had it in us. We knew that something was going to move us on, but we had no idea. And so we were contacted out of the blue from a church, a pastor of a mega church here in Jacksonville, Florida. And he had a supernatural experience, and he'd never had one before. He didn't know how to process it. And so someone in his church had heard of Mike, read The Unseen Realm, and suggested that he and his wife read it. And so when they read it, it kind of gave this guy, this pastor, a place to land of what he experienced. And so they met with us in Seattle for about 5 hours. And I can remember Rich Baker was there with us, and they offered Mike a job to start the Awakening School of Ministry and Theology. And I don't know if you guys know this, but most big megachurches have their own school, they call them, a school of ministry, where they teach, sound and worship and how to preach from a pulpit and all that. But this pastor, he wanted to teach his students theology and not just the inner workings of a church and how to run the sound system. And so he offered Mike, he said, Mike, this is going to be your school. You develop a 2-year course. That's all you have to do. And so that was very palatable to him and to me, because honestly, all of our family is on the East Coast. Our daughter had moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so we were just being pulled back to the East Coast. And so we ended up coming to Florida for Mike to start the Awakening School of Theology. And as you know, Mike Chu, took over Mike's position after he passed away. And so I love that it's come kind of full circle with Mike being here on this podcast. And then, Mike Heiser preceded him, so it's a beautiful thing, actually. Yeah.
It was really big shoes to fill, Drenna. Still very big shoes. Still flopping around, actually. So,
I remember, I think Mike and I had a call around the time that happened with the pastor, and we were just and he just wanted to run it by me. He said, "Hey, man, I think I'm gonna move to Jacksonville, Florida, and work at this mega church." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" Because he had just released the podcast about the house church. And you could tell he was all about the house church. It was he's like, this is it. The guy that he interviewed for the house church from Atlanta, I can't remember his name.
Tim Andrews.
Yes. He was you could just tell Mike was this is the way it is. This is the first century church. This is we're going to do this. And then all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to go work for a mega church. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? You're the house. What are you talking about? I was like, you just did this. And then he said, yeah, but I'm going to be able to start this school. He said, and I think my content is going to have a lot broader reach. I think it's going to just impact more people. He said, I think this church is just going to have the resources to just kind of get things going better. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. Gotcha. So, wherever's God leading, if God's opening that door for you, you need to walk through it, go through it, man. It's I didn't see that coming, but go ahead, man.
I remember where I was when he called me. I was in a parking lot at Kohl's, and he was telling me about the possibility of moving to Florida, and he was going through the list in his head of why it would make good sense. One of them was that he would be able to, and I don't want to misquote the pastor here, but the idea that Mike was given the doctrinal statement of the school, or at least or something like that, like the church even, and he was asked to go through it and to correct it or to improve it, something like that. And Mike loves that kind of thing, to take an existing church's documentation like that theologically and work it through to be careful with it, which is his niche, So I remember again trying to walk into Kohl's and getting rid of the call because I had to go. My wife was waiting for me, and he was talking about, one of the finer points of the doctrinal statement. And I said, "Okay, Mike, I got to run." But that's the kind of calls we'd have, It's that I remember exactly where I was because this was a big thing for Mike, and I knew it was the right thing based on how he was positioning himself within that school and the church and how it was going to look. So yeah, I was glad for him.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, then did you, you're a young mother at this point. You have 3 kids and you move them. And no, they were gone by that, or a couple of them were gone by then, right? Or how did it work for you to make the big move to Florida? How did that affect you as a mother and wife?
Yeah, well, our kids were, I think Simi was, our youngest, she was probably 18 at the time. And so, Calvin was an adult and Amy had just gotten married. And so they all moved with us. We bought a house big enough where we all lived together for the first, and I can talk about that. That is such a story. And I will talk to you about that. But we just all moved in here together and it was really fun actually. And so, they all followed us. So they're not all here now, but they initially came. And so that was a great thing that they decided to move with us.
Did you do work then, or what did you do besides being a mom and wife? Did you?
Oh,
find things
I didn't.
to do in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I was remodeling a house. I love design, and so I was having fun remodeling a house and just being a mom. But I will tell you, okay, so maybe we should jump into that story. Is that okay with you guys? Just jump into the story about Florida?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I just want to tell you just how this whole thing came about, first with the pastor, and then Mike sent me here after we got hired. He trusted me to come by myself to get a house. And so I came to Jacksonville. I don't know anything about Jacksonville. I've never been here. And so I had a realtor from the church, and I had this one house that I was obsessed with. I knew this is a house that, we wanted. And so she had set 7 houses for us to see. Well, the house that I really wanted was the very last house. And I didn't even pay attention, honestly, to any of the other ones, like where we were driving all over Jacksonville. And so when we got to that house, the last house, I hated it. It was like, this house I thought I wanted? No, and I don't like it, and she could see the disappointment in my face because, anyway. And so I'm like, okay, well, there's another house that I do like. We put in a full price offer on it. It had been on the market for 114 days. We put a full price offer on it. And I can tell you, after I put the offer in, that was a Saturday. Sunday, I was still here by myself. So I decided to drive from the church and make that trip that Mike's going to be driving to this house I just put an offer on. Well, it was so far away, and it was through some pretty sketchy areas. The house development that we put an offer on was really nice, but the drive there was just not good. And my heart was kind of, fell a little bit. And I was like, okay, stop being dramatic. It's going to be fine. So I went home, and on Monday, my realtor called me and said, they did not accept your offer. I'm like, what? I said, why? And she said, well, they must have another offer. So I said, okay. So I picked the second house that I liked, and it was on the market for a week, and we put a full price offer. We got it. And so it happens to be the house that we moved to. But that other house, that first house, sat on the market for 45 more days. So I knew right then and there, and honestly, I didn't know right then and there, but now looking back, I knew that the house that we got was exactly where God wanted us. And you'll understand why when I continue the story. But so we moved here, and in January of 2020, and what happened 2 months later? COVID hit. So the church shut down. Everything shut down. We didn't know a soul here. So we're just holed up in this house, this new house, this new area. We don't know anybody. We don't know the neighbors. And so we just hung out as a family, and it really turned out to be a good time. And so Mike is doing the Awakening School, and Mike started to get sick. And he first complained of back pain when he would lay down to go to sleep at night. And it was concerning, but he goes, I was an athlete in high school and college, and I worked for UPS loading trucks. I've always had back issues. I know it's just that. So, he went to chiropractors, he went to a doctor, they put him in physical therapy, and then he went to a pain doctor, and the pain doctor gave him fentanyl patches, just for his back pain. And they didn't, this was 6 months of just him being sick, getting sicker and sicker. So I can remember the last trip that we did, we went to Miami we were going to celebrate our 34th anniversary, and we were also tandeming that with a little conference at this little church. And so Mike got really sick there. He wasn't able to really eat, and it was getting concerning at that point. So we came home, and then 4 days later, he left to go to California for another conference. Well, when he came back, he told me he wasn't able to eat or drink the whole 3 days. And he looked horrible. It was horrifying. And I was like, we're going to ER. He went to urgent care. They took one look at him and said, go to the ER. And that is when they finally did a CAT scan, and they diagnosed him with the bad pancreatic cancer, stage 3. And so, and during that time when Mike was sick, the church kind of imploded, and Awakening almost went under. The school almost went under. And so it was a very hard, I'll just tell you, Florida was not kind to Mike. It was not a good thing for him, because everything that happened to him while we lived here was a challenge, and it was hard. It was very hard, obviously. And so Mayo Clinic is literally 6 miles from our front door. And so Mike was like, well, maybe we were called to Florida because Mayo Clinic's here, and they're going to, help me get over this cancer. Well, they couldn't do anything for Mike. And so the Lord said, no, through all of our prayers, through it all. And he ended up, passing away at home February 20th, 2023. And so he wasn't here very long before he got sick. And so, and I say all that to say, when I say Florida wasn't kind to Mike, it wasn't, but I feel that God moved us to Florida for me this time, because he knew that he was calling Mike home, but he wanted me to be settled in a place that is going to feed me. And I met my future husband here, and that is a great story. And I will just quickly go through that. My husband, Eric, he happens to live in this neighborhood, which is why God moved us here. And Eric had been he had been listening to Mike's YouTube channel and the Naked Bible podcast. And so he knew of Mike. And when he found out he moved to Florida, he was like excited. He's like, wow, I live in Florida. Maybe I can meet him one day. And then he found out that he lived in Jacksonville, and that's where Eric grew up. And then he found out somehow through his aunt that we live in the woods, and that's our neighborhood, and that's where Eric lives. That's where he grew up. And so Eric joked to his aunt, wouldn't that be weird if he lived 3 houses from him? And we live 3 houses from him across the road, not side by side, but we're practically neighbors, and which is so incredible. But I can remember going to the post, going to the mailbox, and Mike got lots of cards during that time. And so there was a card from this guy named Eric. So I remember sitting in the living room reading this card to Mike while Mike was, recovering from chemo that week. And it was a letter just saying that he's praying for us and Mike, and how much Mike has touched his life. And he's a graphic designer. If Mike needs any book covers done, he specializes in book covers and all that. And I said, well, Mike, what do you think? And he goes, did he leave his email? Because Mike only corresponded through email. I said, yes, his email is here. So Mike emailed Eric, and they struck up a little bit of conversation. Eric came over and met Mike and sat with him for a couple hours and talked. He ended up doing 2 book covers for Mike. And so Eric started becoming a friend of our family. He was the first person in our neighborhood that invited us over for a barbecue. And he's an artist, and my kids are all artists. So he would invite my kids over on a Saturday morning to sit on his patio, and they'd do art and listen to their favorite music. So he just really became a friend of the family. And so he was a big support and a prayer warrior for Mike as he was going through cancer. And he was just that friend that we needed, that connection that we needed here in the community for my kids and me to feel enmeshed a little bit in this community. So, and then when Mike passed away, Eric came to the memorial, and he's also a photographer. And I had him come and do all the pictures for the memorial. He did a great job, lots and lots of pictures. And so he was just a real good friend of the family. And so after Mike passed away, Eric started inviting me to church, invited me to do trivia with his friends. And he just really kind of became a really good friend to me and my kids during this time. And so year and a half later, we ended up getting married, and we're going to be celebrating our 2nd anniversary next month. So
it's a great story.
I can just tell you that I just feel that God moved us to Florida for me, to take care of me and to make sure that I am not stuck somewhere without family and friends. So it's been a beautiful thing to see. And it's been a beautiful thing to realize that God sees me, He cares for me, and He has provided for me.
Yeah, He has. Thanks for all that background. I didn't know a lot of that, so cool.
Yeah, that's neat. So you mentioned some of the books that Eric did the covers for. What books did he do the covers for?
He did the book, The Revelation commentary, that's based on the Naked Bible podcast notes.
Yeah, it's on my nightstand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then he did the little Hebrew prayer book that Mike wrote. So he did those 2 covers, but he's also
over there somewhere in my bookshelf.
Yeah. So he'll also be doing the Genesis book that these guys are writing based on the Divine Council Worldview podcast notes and transcripts. So he'll be doing that cover. So that's exciting.
And that's great. What's the other book that we just released, that we just did the
Oh, yes. Let me grab it quick here. It's right behind me. This is our very first book. It's called The Deliverer and the Ten Commandments by Daniel Owen. And it is it's like a primer on the Ten Commandments from an ancient Near East worldview, from the Israelite worldview. It is a primer on how to understand the Ten Commandments as they were given to an wandering Israelite world. And it's great. I can't even, I'm so pleased with it. It is that good. It is so good. It is geared for upper elementary on up. To be really upper elementary, you want to be doing it with your parents. There are parent guided questions in there. There's a whole glossary, like there's words in red. When you see a red word, you go to the glossary to really look up the meaning. There's a whole almost like a bibliography in the back of all the scriptures. It's like Genesis through Revelation. So it's heavily influenced with the whole Bible, not just Exodus, which Daniel did a beautiful job of bringing the whole Bible into the Ten Commandments. And it's just a beautiful book. The artwork is frame-worthy. I'm thrilled with it. It's really great.
That's awesome. That's cool. So what else is coming up? What else is coming down the line? What other irons do you have in the fire that you want to tell us about?
The podcast is a big one, so you guys keep that going. That's amazing. So I know you guys are going through John right now, and we'll have a commentary coming out on that eventually, whenever the guys have time to write that. We do have the Genesis one being read through and edited right now, and so that will come out, and that'll be a really good one. We have we have a Divine Council Worldview conference that we're planning for October 9th and 10th. It's going to be held at the Flatirons Community Church, Pastor Jim Bergen's church in Colorado, Denver, Colorado. And we have a whole lineup. Look, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be such a great conference. I'm so excited about it. Yeah. We'll keep you informed, and just stay tuned to the Michael S. Heiser Foundation.org website. The registration will be dropping there pretty soon, but we'll give you more information on that when it comes about.
Awesome. Yeah, and we interviewed Pastor Jim. He was one of our first, like mine and Rich's first interviews. Man, that was well over a year ago. I'm not even sure what episode that is. Yeah. But he was fun, and we really enjoyed talking to him. I really enjoyed when we heard about him, and we heard that he was like preaching that topic, because he had gone on sabbatical like a previous summer and just had like a come to Jesus moment, just like a red pill moment. And watching him, and I made sure to tune in and watch his sermons about every Sunday, because I wanted to see how he walked his church through introducing this topic, like on a mass level, because this is a heavy topic to drop in church. Granted, it should be just kind of like knowledge. That's why, in Jude and Peter, when they reference the book of Enoch, they just say a little sentence, and everyone knows what they're going back to. But none of us have that, But to watch Jim try and bring his church up to speed, like to introduce it to them, and then to kind of open their minds to how much this influences the rest of Scripture was just awesome. And I could tell sometimes he was just so excited he wanted to burst, but he's like, no, I got to pace myself. I got to pace it. I got to do this slowly. I can't feed them with a fire hose, because you want to feed everybody with a fire hose with this stuff, but you can't. And he just did a fantastic job, and we really, really enjoyed watching it. We really enjoyed talking to him. So I'm glad that relationship is still there, still going strong, and we can have it at his church. It's a brilliant. That was actually something we talked about with him. Maybe it was on the podcast, but it was definitely before. We definitely talked with him about it while we were talking with him. He was like, yeah, come on, bring it. So we're excited about it.
All the pastors that I talked with on the Zoom meeting and the event coordinator, they all know Mike's stuff. They all love him. They are so excited. They are actually gifting us the event.
That's wonderful.
I am blown away. I am blown away by that. They are giving us all their volunteer. I just praise Jesus. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's wonderful. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Mike, Ron, do you guys got anything else?
I just love the backstory. Again, I miss Mike and our times together, but Susan misses him too, and us four when we'd get together. And I just remember those times wherever, whether it be in Dallas or Madison or St. Paul. I mean, we just always enjoyed those times. And so when I see you, Drenna, I always think of how much I miss Mike as well. And I want you to know that I think you said it really well when you said that God took you to Florida, not just for Mike, but for you. God is not just a creator, but a provider, right? And he is always looking out for us. And I remember Mike saying that Mayo Clinic was probably his answer to prayer. That's why he was, so close. But it turned out Mayo couldn't solve what he had, and God just missed him too much. That's often how I think of death. Is God just says it's time to come home. So I thank you for this time, Drenna, and just those stories bring back great memories. And I want everyone to know, if they don't know already, how personable this foundation is. It's not about notoriety. It's not about fame. It's not about anything more than the love of Christ. And a couple, Mike and Drenna, who gave their heart and life to Jesus a long time ago, and God had a certain plan for you guys, and you're still in the middle of the plan. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can remember reading all of Mike's little letters to me after he passed away. I have a whole file on the computer telling me, what I should do with this bank account, this organization, that organization. And the Michael S. Heiser Foundation was originally McLot.org. That was Mike's name for it, means haven. And he specifically said, regarding McLot, just let it die. Don't worry about it. It'll eventually go away. And I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to let that happen, So that is what really spurred me on. There were 4 things that Mike cared about in his month of hospice. And that was his library, which went to Shepherd Seminary in North Carolina, Dr. Dave Burgraff's seminary, where he is the dean there. He cared about his legacy. He had nightmares about his legacy while he was in hospice, and talked to me about it. He cared about his 4 kids and his pugs, those 4 things. And so I feel like the library went to a good place. My kids are doing well. I'm taking care of the pugs, all 3 of them. But the legacy was something that I wasn't prepared for. And I wasn't even thinking about, really, because I'm not a content creator. But Mike laid a beautiful foundation for his nonprofit, and made lots of good friends. Mike Chu, Mel, Rich Baker, Ron Johnson, among lots of others. I have those contacts, and I was like, no, there's no way I'm going to let this die. I'm good at pulling people together. I'm good at ideas. I'm good at spearheading things. I'm just not good at the content creation or actually, getting them going. So I have a good team behind me that helps me. And I decided that I wanted to rename it to the Michael S. Heiser Foundation, because I want to honor Mike, and I want people that are searching for Mike's stuff to not have to wade through what is McLot.org. I want them to know there's no ambiguity. Everything we do is in Michael's name. And I'm so glad I did it, and I don't regret it. It's been a lot of work. It's been challenging, but it's been so rewarding, and I know it's what the Lord has me doing.
That's great. Mike, anything? You got anything?
Well, I was just thinking about that. The first time we ever visited your house, Drenna, me and my wife, Sophia. And I mean, you guys were so gracious. And Sophia still remembers how she was so happy to find out that you love coffee too. And so it was a great moment. And I just remember, that night after we all had met up, and I was just talking with Mike, because I think I was going through some questions regarding the church that we were at. And I mean, this was after COVID. I think a lot of folks had just questions about how do we move on. And I remember Mike just telling me that for himself, it was, how can I be useful? And that's basically stuck with me ever since. Because I remember him saying that, he may never be able to be 100% comfortable with any church that he's at. It's like, there will never be a church that you're 100%, oh, this is perfect. But the question he always asked himself was, can I be useful? Like that's been part of my own valuing ever since he's mentioned that. And even at the church that my wife and I are still a part of, like, that is kind of the heart of what I'm doing right now, even as a teaching pastor there. And so, yeah, that's kind of one of the strongest memories I have of Mike. And I cherish every one of those moments I got to help him out at the Awakening School live QA sessions with the students, where we had no idea what questions were coming, who was going to log in. But it was just a chance to just chat with Mike and shoot the breeze, and even just chat about the Red Sox or the Pats sometimes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, those are memories I definitely cherish and I still think of sometimes.
That's a great point to end on, because you and Ron do a great job with the teaching, and there's a lot of we all really appreciate that. And that's kind of what we're trying to continue. But at the same time, we don't want people just to be consumers. We want them to be doers. And so we want the people that watch this show to consume it, but then think, like you said, how can I be useful? So that's why Rich and I have done our portion, is just bringing people on the show. It's like, how are they taking this and how are they trying to be useful? And hopefully it strikes a chord with someone. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Hadn't thought about that. I could probably start doing that in my local area, But I think that's the biggest key. That's part of the Great Commission, is how to be useful, I mean, he didn't say, but if you could kind of boil it down a little bit, it's like, go out and be useful. Go ye therefore into all the world and be useful in my name. So I think that's great.
And actually, that is the focus of the conference is, I don't want this to just be an academic place where people are going to come and learn. Our focus and our subtitle is going to be something about how is this useful for the kingdom and kingdom building? Because, yeah, it's great to learn all these things, but we need to be active in the kingdom and in our world and with our worldview, which is very important. This worldview is very important, and it matters. And Mike, he knew it mattered. And so that's another way to honor him, is not just take in all the cool stuff that he said, and but to actually be applying it for the gospel and for the kingdom.
I wouldn't be involved in this ministry if it wasn't my respect for the utter Christianity of that man. He was, obviously you're married to him, so you know better than I do, but as one of his good friends, he was one of the most thoroughly converted men I've ever met. And I have the utmost respect for him. There was not again, I'm talking from an outsider compared to you, but I never had one doubt that this man's life was committed to Christ, and to you, Drenna, and to his kids. Such a consistent man. So,
I often wondered if he was really human sometimes, and I know he was, obviously, but when the Bible says you entertain angels unaware, sometimes I wondered.
Mm-hmm.
Truly.
I think that's why we ask people or their experience with him, and even people not on this podcast. Like I've watched some of the Blurry Creatures episodes, and they'll interview Joel Mutamali, and they'll ask him, and Joel will first talk about, well, this is how I met Mike, and this is what I mean. Everybody is like, how did I meet this man? There's something special about it when everybody wants to talk about how did I meet him, what was my interaction with him. So I think it's awesome, and I think it's almost silly that Mike had to worry about his legacy because everyone else is worrying about it for him. We're doing it. He did all the front end work really well. It's so easy to carry forward. So we're happy to do this, and we're happy to do this 100th anniversary episode, 100th episode with everybody. We're glad you guys came along. Drenna, thank you so much for coming along. Mike, Ron, thanks for looping in. Glad we could make this happen for everybody's schedule. And everybody, stay tuned for the information regarding the conference coming up. That information will kind of trickle out here and there as things kind of solidify. There's still things in the work and plans to be made, but we're on it. But we thank you guys for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you at the 200th episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.